A millionaire leaves his mansion as usual to travel when a little beggar girl approaches him, making him stop the car. She says, "Uncle, has the plumber finished the job yet?" Intrigued, he asks what plumber, and the girl reveals that every time he leaves to travel, his wife calls the plumber, but today he said he was going to bring special tools. The millionaire states that he wasn't expecting any plumber, so he decides to cancel the trip and wait hidden to discover who this plumber is. What he sees leaves him completely shocked. The Tuesday morning dawned with that golden luminosity that promised a perfect day. Richard Sterling adjusted the knot of his designer silk tie as he observed the impeccable, sprawling gardens through his panoramic bedroom window. At 38, he had built an empire few could imagine. But at that moment, preparing for another business trip, he felt the familiar weight of loneliness that had accompanied him since childhood. The scent of jasmine subtly filled the air as he descended the Carrara marble staircase, his footsteps echoing in the vast entrance hall. Camilla, his wife of 5 years, had left early for the gym, as she always did on Tuesdays. He smiled, remembering how meticulously she maintained her physique, one of the qualities that had captivated him when they met at that business conference in Paris. His Louis Vuitton luggage awaited, neatly arranged near the main door. This trip to London would only last 3 days, but it represented the culmination of a deal that would triple his investments in the European market. Richard had always prided himself on his ability to read people and situations, a skill he attributed both to his business success and to the need for self-preservation, developed after being abandoned by his parents at 7. The chauffeur would arrive in 15 minutes. He picked up the suitcases, feeling the familiar weight of important documents stored in the secret compartment of the largest one. Trust had always been his trademark, in his employees, in his partners, especially in Camilla, who had become not only his companion, but also his primary business advisor. The sound of birds chirping mingled with the distant hum of morning traffic as he opened the front door. The breeze carried promises of a productive day. That's when he saw her, the little girl who had frequented that street for months, always discreetly observing the movements around the luxurious homes. She couldn't have been more than 7, too thin for her age, with large, expressive eyes that seemed to hold secrets too heavy for someone so small. "Morning, Mr. Richard," she whispered, approaching with the familiarity of someone who had already established a silent connection. Richard always left her a few dollars when he left, a gesture he made discreetly, without fanfare. There was something about that child that deeply touched his soul, perhaps the recognition of a loneliness he knew intimately. "Good morning, little one. How are you today?" Richard smiled genuinely, setting his bags down for a moment. He had learned that she responded better to kindness than to the rush of busy adults. The girl looked around nervously, as if wanting to ensure they were alone. Then, in an even lower voice, she said something that made Richard's world stop. "Mr. Richard, the plumber is coming again today." "What plumber?" The question came out automatically, but a strange feeling began to form in his stomach. Camilla hadn't mentioned any plumbing issues recently. The girl's eyes widened slightly, as if she had said something she shouldn't have. "Oh, every time you go on a trip. Auntie calls the plumber, but today he said he was bringing some special tools." Richard's blood ran cold instantly. Special tools. His mind began to process information with the speed that had made him a successful businessman, but this time, each conclusion seemed more disturbing than the last. "Special tools for what, little one?" His voice was tenser than he intended. The child seemed to realize she had shared something too important. She took a step back, but kept her eyes fixed on his, as if wanting to convey an urgent message that her words couldn't fully express. At that moment, the sound of an approaching car broke the tense silence between them, and Richard realized his life had just changed forever. The chauffeur stepped out of the black Mercedes and walked towards the mansion entrance, but Richard raised his hand, signaling him to wait. His brain was working at maximum speed, processing every word the girl had said, like pieces of a puzzle he didn't even know existed. "Little one, are you sure about the plumber?" Richard knelt to be at her eye level, keeping his voice soft despite the storm brewing inside him. "Have you seen him other times?" The child nodded vigorously, her disheveled curls bouncing with the movement. "Yes, Mr. Richard. He always comes when you leave in the car with your bags. Auntie gets all dressed up, you know, with that strong perfume. You can smell all the way from the street." Strong perfume. Camilla always wore only a delicate, almost imperceptible fragrance. Richard felt the first knot form in his stomach. Every detail the girl shared seemed to deconstruct the perfect image he had of his married life. "And today is different because he's bringing special tools," he insisted, trying to maintain a casual tone while his mind raced frantically. "Yeah, I heard him call her yesterday afternoon. I was just around the corner, playing with a doll I found, when he walked by talking on the phone. He said he'd bring those tools you asked for today, and that this time it would be definitive." Definitive. The word echoed in Richard's mind like an alarm bell. What kind of plumbing work would be definitive? And why hadn't Camilla mentioned any hydraulic issues? They talked about everything, or at least he believed they did. The chauffeur discreetly cleared his throat, reminding him of his appointment. The flight to London was departing in 2 hours, and he should have already checked in. But how could he travel with that information pounding in his head? "Mr. Sterling, we need to go, sir," the chauffeur murmured, approaching respectfully. Richard looked at the girl once more. "What's your name, little one?" "Sophia," she replied softly, nervously fidgeting with the hem of her worn t-shirt. "Sophia, thank you for telling me this. You're a very observant girl." He took a $50 bill from his pocket and held it out to her. "Buy something nice to eat today, okay?" Sophia's eyes lit up, but she hesitated before taking the money. "Mr. Richard, aren't you going on your trip today?" The question surprised him. How had a 7-year-old perceived his hesitation? "Why do you ask that? You always rush off when you see me, hurrying so you don't miss your flight. Today you're different. You look worried." The girl's perceptiveness impressed him, and at the same time confirmed his fears. If even a child could sense that something was wrong, how had he been so blind? Richard made an impulsive decision. "Pete," he said to the chauffeur, "take the bags back inside. I'm cancelling the trip." "Sir, Mr. Thompson is waiting for you in London. This deal represents millions." "I know exactly what it represents," Richard interrupted, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no questioning. "Tell Mr. Thompson I had a family emergency. We'll reschedule for next week." As the chauffeur obediently carried the bags back inside, Richard turned to Sophia. "You said he always calls my wife before he comes." "Always. Usually early in the morning after you've left. But yesterday was different. It was in the afternoon, and he seemed more excited." Excited? Richard's stomach tightened even more. What kind of plumber got excited about plumbing work? "Sophia, I need to ask you a very important favor." Richard leaned closer to her. "Can you stay around here today and let me know if you see the plumber arriving? But without letting anyone know you're watching, okay?" The girl nodded solemnly, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. "You want me to be your spy?" Something like that. Richard almost smiled despite his anguish. "But it's our secret." "Agreed." "Agreed, Mr. Richard." He paused, surprised. "How do you know my name?" Sophia discreetly pointed to the golden plaque at the property entrance. "It says there, the Sterling Estate, and the mail carrier always says, 'Mail for Mr. Sterling,' when she delivers letters." Once again, the child's attention to detail impressed him. How many other things had she observed that could be important? As he walked back to the mansion, Richard felt he was about to discover truths he might prefer not to know. Richard watched from the office window as the chauffeur drove away, taking with him the routine he knew so well. The mansion had never seemed so large and silent. Every echo of his footsteps on the marble seemed amplified, as if the house itself were whispering secrets he couldn't decipher. Camilla would return from the gym in an hour. That gave him enough time to look for evidence of this plumber without raising suspicion. But where to start? Richard realized, with a pang in his chest, that he knew very little about his own wife's daily routine when he wasn't present. He started with the obvious, the kitchen and bathrooms. If there were really plumbing problems, there would certainly be visible signs. He examined every faucet, every connection, every visible pipe. Everything worked perfectly. Not even a drop of water dripped anywhere. In the master suite bathroom, where he and Camilla spent every morning getting ready for the day, Richard observed every detail, as if seeing everything for the first time. The jetted shower he had installed the previous year worked impeccably. The golden faucets gleamed without any sign of problems. All the valves were in perfect condition. So why would a plumber come here repeatedly? He murmured to himself, feeling the first real sting of distrust towards the woman he loved. He went down to the basement, a space he rarely visited. Camilla always said she took care of the house's organization, and he fully trusted her efficiency. Now, he walked through every corner with an investigator's eyes, looking for any clue that would explain the mysterious visits. That's when he found it. Hidden behind boxes of Christmas decorations was a toolbox he had never seen before. It wasn't one of the expensive brands he usually bought for small household repairs. It was a simple, black box with locks that seemed more robust than necessary for common tools. Richard opened the box with trembling hands. Inside, he found tools that definitely weren't for plumbing. There were special pliers, strangely shaped wrenches, and something that made him freeze, small electronic devices that looked like listening or recording equipment. "What the hell is this?" His voice echoed in the empty basement, laden with growing incredulity. He photographed everything with his phone before putting each item back exactly as he had found it. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a cold rage that began to replace the initial confusion. He went back up to the main floor. Heading to the office, he shared with Camilla. She always handled the administrative side of some of his smaller investments, and he had always been proud of the professional partnership they had developed. Now, he looked at her desk with completely different eyes. He searched for anything out of the ordinary. Papers he didn't recognize, coded notes, unknown phone numbers. At first, everything seemed normal. Then, in a drawer he rarely opened, he found a small notebook, hidden under stacks of old receipts. The notes were in handwriting that was definitely not Camilla's. Bank account numbers, codes he didn't recognize, and names he had never heard. What disturbed him most was a list of dates, all corresponding exactly to the days of his business trips over the past 6 months. "My God," he whispered, feeling the ground move beneath his feet. "How long has this been going on?" The sound of the garage door opening made him jump like a teenager caught doing something forbidden. Camilla had returned early from the gym. Richard quickly put the notebook away, making sure to leave everything exactly as he had found it. He hurried to the bedroom, pretending to be resting after canceling the trip. When he heard her footsteps on the stairs, he closed his eyes and tried to control his accelerated breathing. "Richard, I thought you'd already left for the airport." Camilla's voice echoed down the hall, laden with a surprise that sounded more like concern than joy. "I canceled the trip. I was feeling a bit unwell," he replied, keeping his eyes closed as she entered the room. He felt her approach the bed, but couldn't help noticing the hesitation in her movements. Camilla, who always greeted him with warm kisses when she arrived, this time maintained a subtle but perceptible distance. "Unwell? You never cancel trips because of feeling unwell." There was something in her voice he had never noticed before, a kind of cautious calculation. "Maybe I'm getting old." Richard tried to sound casual, but every word from his wife now resonated like an alarm in his mind. What scared him most was realizing that, For the first time in 5 years of marriage, he felt fear of his own wife. Camilla remained standing beside the bed for a few seconds that felt eternal. Richard kept his eyes closed, but he could feel the weight of her gaze on him, as if he were being analyzed, studied. When he finally heard her move away towards the bathroom, he carefully opened his eyes. Through the vanity mirror, he watched her take her phone out of her bag and quickly type something. The expression on her face was not that of a wife worried about her husband's illness, but of someone whose plans had been unexpectedly altered. Richard felt a shiver run down his spine. "I'll take a shower and prepare a special lunch for you to recover," Camilla said, her voice resuming the sweet, caring tone he knew so well. But now, every word sounded rehearsed, theatrical. As soon as he heard the shower stop, Richard silently got up. He had only a few minutes to act. He went to the living room, where he kept an old landline phone he rarely used. He dialed his office. "Marina, I need you to do something discreetly for me," he told his personal assistant, keeping his voice low. "I need you to hire a private investigator, the best one you can find. I need information about some suspicious activities at my residence." "Mr. Sterling, is something wrong? You sound worried." Richard hesitated. Marina had worked with him for 10 years. She was one of the few people he trusted completely. "It might be, and Marina, absolute secrecy. Not a word to my wife in case she calls asking anything about my schedule or the trip cancellation." "Understood, sir. I'll handle it immediately." He hung up just as he heard the shower stop. He quickly returned to the bedroom, pretending he had just gone to the bathroom. When Camilla emerged wrapped in a towel, he noticed something he had never perceived before. She discreetly checked her phone for messages even before drying off. "Darling, how about some soup? It always helps when you're not feeling well," she suggested. But Richard noticed her eyes didn't show the usual genuine concern. "That would be great," he forced a smile. "Camilla, you haven't mentioned any plumbing problems lately?" The question caught her off guard. For a fraction of a second, Richard saw a flicker of panic cross her face before she regained her composure. "Plumbing? No. Why? Are you having any issues?" "Not exactly. It's just, you know how paranoid I am about house maintenance. Sometimes I worry something might go wrong when I'm traveling." Camilla laughed, but the laugh sounded forced. "You and your worries. If there were any problems, I'd take care of them immediately. You know me." "Yes," Richard replied slowly. "I thought I knew you." If she noticed the subtlety of the phrase, she didn't show it. Or perhaps she was too good at hiding reactions. While she prepared lunch, Richard took the opportunity to quietly slip out into the garden, where he knew he would find Sophia. The girl was exactly where he expected, playing with some pebbles near the gate. "Sophia," he called softly, approaching the fence. "Did anything happen today? Did the plumber show up?" The girl looked around before answering. "No, Mr. Richard, but he called Auntie. I heard her answer the phone in the backyard. She sounded angry and said you hadn't left, that the plans would have to change." Richard's heart pounded faster. "Plans? What kind of plans?" "I don't know everything, Mr. Richard, but she also said something about rescheduling everything for when he travels again, and that this time it couldn't go wrong." This time it couldn't go wrong. The words echoed in Richard's mind like hammers. How many other times had it gone wrong? What exactly was being planned for his absences? "Sophia, you are a very brave girl," he said, extending a few more bills through the fence. "Keep watching for me, but very carefully. If any strange adult approaches you or tries to take you away from here, you run to the house on the corner and ask for help, okay?" The girl's large eyes widened. "Mr. Richard, are you scared?" The simple question hit Richard like a punch. Yes, he was scared. Scared of discovering that the last 5 years of his life had been an elaborate lie. Scared that the woman who slept beside him every night was a stranger. Scared of not knowing the extent of the betrayal. "A little one. But you'll help me be brave, okay?" Sophia nodded solemnly. "I'll take care of you, Mr. Richard." When he went back inside, he found Camilla putting soup on the table. She smiled sweetly, as she always did. But now Richard saw calculation behind that expression. How had he been so blind for so long? "Ready, my love. Your medicinal soup is served." He sat at the table, observing her every movement, every expression, every word. It was like seeing his own wife for the first time, and the discovery terrified him. Throughout lunch, a single question pounded in his mind. Who was the woman sitting across from him, really? The next morning, Richard woke with the sensation that he had slept beside a stranger. Camilla behaved normally, preparing breakfast with the same efficiency as always, but her every gesture now seemed calculated. He subtly watched as she obsessively checked her phone, always turning the screen away from him. "Honey, I need to go to some meetings today," she announced casually, spreading jelly on toast. "Annoying administrative matters for our smaller investments. You know how bureaucratic these things are." Richard nodded, maintaining a neutral expression despite the alarm blaring in his mind. Camilla had never mentioned in-person meetings for these matters before. Everything had always been handled by phone or email. "Of course. Will it take long?" "Maybe all day. You know how these things are." She kissed him on the forehead, a gesture that should have been affectionate but now made him nauseous. "Get plenty of rest. You still look a bit under the weather." As soon as she left, Richard called Marina. "Has the investigator been hired?" "Yes, sir. Detective Charles Miller, with excellent references. He can start today if needed." "It is needed. Give him my address and tell him it's extremely urgent. I want discreet surveillance of my residence, especially of people who might approach when my wife is alone." "Understood. Anything else?" Richard hesitated before asking the question that tormented him. "Marina, could you discreetly check the joint bank account's history, especially transactions on days when I was traveling in the last 6 months?" "Of course, sir. I'll handle that immediately." After hanging up, Richard went to the basement again. This time, he examined everything more carefully. Besides the mysterious toolbox, he found something he had missed the day before: a small stack of papers hidden behind the furnace. They were receipts. Receipts from expensive hotels, sophisticated restaurants, jewelry stores, all dated exactly to the periods of his travels. But what shocked him was realizing that the amounts were astronomical, far beyond what Camilla usually spent, and all paid with cards he didn't recognize. "How did she get these cards?" he muttered, photographing each document. One receipt in particular caught his attention. It was from an exclusive jewelry store for $50,000, purchased 2 weeks ago, exactly when he had been in Chicago closing a contract. The item description was vague. "Special services as requested." What kind of special services would a jewelry store offer for $50,000? His cell phone rang, interrupting him. It was an unknown number. "Mr. Sterling, this is Detective Miller. Your assistant briefed me on the case. I can be there in 20 minutes to talk." "Perfect. Use the side entrance to the property. There's a smaller gate that leads directly to the back garden." While he waited, Richard decided to talk to Sophia again. He found her in her usual spot, but this time she seemed agitated. "Mr. Richard, something strange happened last night," she said as soon as she saw him. "After you went inside, I saw Auntie talking on the phone in the garden. She was very nervous and said things like, 'He suspects something, and we'll have to speed up the timeline.'" Richard's blood ran cold. "Timeline? What kind of timeline did she mention?" "I didn't understand everything, Mr. Richard, but she also said something about the transfer has to happen before he finds out, and the document is almost ready." Transfer. Document. The puzzle pieces began to form a terrifying picture. Richard felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. They were planning to steal everything and flee. "Sophia, listen closely," he said, kneeling to be at her height. "From now on, I want you to be very, very careful. If any adult you don't know tries to talk to you or offers you anything, you run. Understand? The seriousness in his voice scared the girl. Mr. Richard, are you in danger? Before he could answer, he saw a man approaching from the side entrance. He wore casual clothes, but had the unmistakable demeanor of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. It must be the detective. Sophia, I'm going to talk to a friend now. You stay here, but far away. Okay? And if you see my wife coming back, you let me know. Detective Miller approached with a firm handshake. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair, eyes that seemed to read every detail of the environment. Mr. Sterling, from what your assistant informed me, you suspect irregular activities at your residence during your absences. More than suspect, I'm sure. Richard handed him the photos of the documents and tools. I found all of this hidden in my own house, and there's a child from the street here who has been observing strange movements. The detective examined the images with professional attention. His expression grew increasingly serious. Mr. Sterling, from what I'm seeing here, you might be involved in something much more serious than a simple marital infidelity. He looked directly into Richard's eyes. These electronic devices are professional espionage tools, and these receipts, this isn't personal shopping behavior. This is money laundering. Richard felt his legs weaken. Money laundering, but the money is mine. Exactly. And that's what makes the situation even more serious. Detective Miller put his phone away after examining the photos Richard had taken. His grave expression confirmed the businessman's worst fears. Mr. Sterling, I need to be direct with you. This equipment isn't for common domestic spying. These are tools for bank interception and device cloning. Your wife, or whoever is behind this, has access to information that could completely compromise your businesses and finances. Richard felt the world spin around him. Are you saying she might be stealing from my company? I'm saying she has the means to do so, and from the receipts you found, she's already moving considerable sums. The detective pointed to one of the images. Look at this jewelry store. I know the establishment. They don't sell jewelry for $50,000. They offer discreet acquisition services, basically converting money into untraceable assets. My God. Richard ran his hands through his hair, trying to process the information. How long could this have been going on? From the patterns I observe, at least a year, maybe more. Miller paused strategically. Mr. Sterling, I need to ask, have you checked your bank accounts recently? The main ones. Not just the joint ones. The question hit Richard like lightning. When was the last time he had personally checked his statements? Camilla always handled the household finances, and he trusted her completely. Not frequently. My wife, I trusted her to take care of those matters. I suggest you check immediately, but carefully. If she has access to your devices, she might be monitoring your activities. At that moment, Sophia came running through the garden, visibly agitated. Mr. Richard, Auntie is coming back. She's coming up the street with a man I've never seen. The detective reacted instantly. Where can I hide to observe without being seen? There's a small tool shed at the back of the garden. You can see the main entrance from there. Richard turned to Sophia. Little one, you need to get out of here now. Go far from the house and only come back after they leave, okay? But Sophia shook her head determinedly. No, Mr. Richard, I want to help you. I can hide in the big tree. No one sees me there. Before Richard could protest, they heard the sound of the electronic gate opening. The detective ran to position himself, and Richard quickly went back inside the house, trying to appear normal. Camilla entered, accompanied by a tall, dark-haired man, dressed in simple work clothes. He carried a toolbox identical to the one Richard had found in the basement. Darling, so glad you're feeling better, Camilla said, but Richard noticed the tension in her voice. This is Mr. Johnson, the plumber who's going to check a small problem with the hydraulic system. The man extended his hand to Richard. Nice to meet you, Mr. Sterling. Your wife told me about some strange noises in the pipes when you're not home. The lie was so blatant that Richard almost couldn't maintain his composure. Noises. I didn't notice anything. Oh, they're very subtle, Camilla quickly intervened. I only noticed because I spend more time at home when you're traveling. Better safe than sorry, right? Richard watched the two as they feigned normalcy. There was an intimacy between them that didn't align with a professional relationship. The way they looked at each other, how they communicated through almost imperceptible gestures. They were clearly much closer than Camilla made it seem. Of course, better safe than sorry indeed. Richard forced a smile. I'll let you work. I'll be in the office if you need anything. He went up to the office but positioned himself to discreetly observe their movements. Instead of heading to any area that needed hydraulic repair, they went directly to the shared office downstairs. Richard silently descended the stairs and positioned himself where he could listen without being seen. What he heard made his blood run cold. The transfers have to happen today, Camilla's voice said, now without any sweet disguise. He cancelled the trip, which means he's suspicious. We can't wait any longer. But we're still missing some documents, the supposed plumber replied. If we do it now, it might leave traces. I don't care about traces. In 48 hours, we'll be out of the country. He can suspect all he wants. Out of the country. Richard felt the floor disappear completely beneath his feet. They were planning to steal everything and flee. And what about the kid problem? The man asked. She saw too much. She could be dangerous. The girl from the street. Camilla's voice took on a cold tone Richard had never heard. No one will believe an abandoned child, but if she continues to be a nuisance, we can deal with that too. The menacing tone in the voice of the woman he had loved for 5 years made Richard tremble with horror. It wasn't just his money at risk. Sophia was also in danger. At that moment, he realized he knew absolutely nothing about the woman he had married. Richard silently retreated, his heart pounding so hard he feared they could hear it. He needed to alert the detective immediately, but when he turned to leave, he found himself face to face with Camilla, who had come up the stairs silently. Darling, what are you doing just standing there? There was something different in her eyes, a coldness he had never seen before. I was coming to see how the work was going, he stammered, trying to maintain normalcy. Camilla studied him for a moment that felt eternal. Richard, can I ask you a question? Why did you really cancel the trip yesterday? The direct question caught him off guard. It was as if she already knew he had discovered something. I already said I wasn't feeling well. She nodded slowly, but her eyes remained fixed on his. You know, it's funny. In 5 years of marriage, you've never cancelled a trip due to feeling unwell, not even when you had pneumonia last year. Richard felt cold sweat trickle down his back. Oh, sometimes people change. Sometimes people change, she repeated, as if testing the taste of the words. Or sometimes people discover things they'd rather not know. At that moment, the supposed plumber appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Camilla, we need to fix that problem now. We don't have any more time. Camilla's mask finally dropped completely. Her face transformed into a cold, calculating expression that Richard had never imagined her capable of. You heard our conversation, didn't you, Richard? It was no longer a question, but an assertion. There was no point in pretending anymore. Who are you? The question came out as a hoarse whisper. Camilla laughed, a sound that chilled Richard's blood. I'm someone very good at what I do, and what I do is identify rich, lonely, and overly trusting men. You! This was all planned from the beginning, from that conference in Paris, my dear. Did you think it was a coincidence we met there? I spent 6 months studying your routine, your habits, your psychological vulnerabilities. She descended a step, and Richard realized he was being cornered. Men abandoned in childhood are so predictable. You have a desperate thirst for belonging that makes you incredibly manipulative. The words hit Richard like physical blows. Every affectionate gesture, every moment of intimacy, every I love you, whispered in the dark. It had all been an act. Paul isn't a plumber, is he? Richard looked at the man who remained standing, blocking his exit. Paul has been my partner for 10 years. We're a very efficient team. Camilla smiled coldly. You're our 6th project, Richard, and definitely the most profitable. 6th? The horror of the revelation hit him like an avalanche. You did this to other people? 5 other men very similar to you. Rich, successful, emotionally needy. She enumerated them as if listing professional achievements. The difference is that this time we decided to be more ambitious. Instead of just stealing some of the money, we're taking everything. At that moment, a child's voice screamed from the garden, "Mr. Richard, watch out!" Sophia's cry broke the trance of horror Richard was immersed in. Camilla and Paul instinctively turned towards the sound, and Richard took advantage of the distraction to push Camilla and run down the stairs. "Get him!" Camilla yelled, but Richard had already reached the back door. He ran through the garden towards Sophia's cry, but what he saw made him stop in shock. The girl was on the ground, and a third man, whom he hadn't seen before, was holding her by the arms. "Let her go!" Richard shouted, running towards them. That's when he heard Detective Miller's voice coming from behind the tool shed. "Police! Everyone on the ground! Now!" What happened in the next few seconds changed everything. The man holding Sophia, startled by the detective's shout, abruptly released her and ran. Paul tried to flee through the side entrance, but was intercepted by 2 police officers Miller had called for backup. Camilla, realizing she was surrounded, tried one last desperate move. "Richard, you don't understand. I really fell in love with you. Everything changed. I was going to stop all of this." Her tears seemed genuine, but Richard could no longer distinguish between truth and pretense. It was then that Sophia, still on the ground but safe, said something no one expected. "She's lying, Mr. Richard. Last night she told the plumber that when it was all over, you two would laugh so hard about how easy he was to fool." The silence that followed was deafening. Camilla looked at Sophia with a pure hatred that finally revealed her true nature. At that moment, Richard understood that his life had been saved by a 7-year-old child whom no one considered important, and that his greatest tragedy had become, paradoxically, his greatest luck. 2 hours later, the mansion Richard had always considered his refuge had been transformed into a crime scene. Police officers moved through each room, photographing evidence and cataloging the espionage tools found. Detective Miller coordinated the operation, while Richard observed everything from a chair in the garden, still in shock. Sophia sat beside him, with a small bandage on her knee where she had hurt herself falling. A social worker had arrived to take care of her, but the girl refused to leave Richard's side. "Mr. Richard, are you okay?" she asked for the 10th time, her large eyes showing a concern that contrasted sharply with the coldness Camilla had displayed in the last few hours. "I am, little one, thanks to you." Richard gently ran his hand through the child's disheveled hair. "You were very brave today. You saved my life." "I promised I'd take care of you," she replied simply, as if protecting an adult were the most natural thing in the world for a 7-year-old. Detective Miller approached with a grave expression. "Mr. Sterling, we need to talk about what we've discovered." Richard stood up, but Sophia grabbed his hand. "Can I stay, Mr. Richard?" "Perhaps it would be better," Miller began, but Richard interrupted him. "She can stay. Sophia is part of all of this." He looked at the girl. "But if you get scared at any point, you can leave, okay?" Miller nodded and opened a file. "Mr. Sterling, the situation is much more serious than we imagined. Your wife, whose real name is Victoria Hayes, and her accomplice Mark Evans form a duo specializing in long-term marital scams." "You said they did this 5 times before," Richard murmured, remembering Camilla's words. "Correct. We gained access to their computers and found detailed records of other operations. They didn't just steal money. They deeply studied the psychology of their victims, their emotional vulnerabilities, creating complete psychological profiles to maximize manipulation." Richard felt nauseous. "So, everything she knew about me, All the intimate things I shared were used as manipulation tools. They had notes on your fears of abandonment, your need for control, even your culinary tastes and bedroom preferences. Miller paused delicately, looking at Sophia. Pardon my frankness, but it's important you understand the extent of the violation. Sophia, who had listened to everything with solemn attention, surprised both men. Mr. Richard, Auntie never really liked those songs you used to listen to in the garden. When you weren't around, she always changed to different ones and spoke badly about them. Even in small things, everything had been a lie. Richard felt a deep pain in his chest, as if he were mourning someone who had never truly existed. "There's more," Miller continued. "We found evidence that they were planning not only to steal your assets, but also to forge documents to simulate your death in an accident. That would explain the special tools Sophia mentioned." My death. Richard felt the world spin. Apparently, killing the victims became part of their modus operandi in recent operations. We discovered that at least 2 of the previous targets died in accidents shortly after transferring their fortunes. Sophia squeezed Richard's hand tighter. "That's why I was worried, Mr. Richard. They always talked about you like you were temporary." The child's perception was chillingly accurate. Richard realized that, were it not for Sophia's careful observation and courage, he would probably be dead in a few weeks. "But there's good news," Miller said. "We managed to block all transfers in time. Your assets are secure, and with the evidence we've collected, Victoria and Mark will face decades in prison. And the others, the other victims who died. Now that we have evidence, we will reopen those investigations. Their families can finally get justice." Richard nodded, but his mind was focused on something else. He looked at Sophia, who was observing him with that deep attention that had become familiar. "Detective, Sophia was in danger today. If they were capable of killing before, we've already thought about that. The social worker will ensure she stays safe until—" "No." Richard's voice was firmer than he expected. "Sophia stays with me." The social worker, who had remained silent until then, spoke up. "Mr. Sterling, I understand your gratitude, but there are legal procedures for child custody. Sophia needs specialized care. A structured family—" "She has a structured family," Richard interrupted, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "She has me." Sophia looked at him with shining eyes. "Mr. Richard, do you want to be my real dad?" The simple question hit Richard more deeply than all the day's revelations. For 5 years, he had believed he had a family with Camilla. Now he discovered that his true family had been on the street in front of his house all along, watching, protecting, caring. "If you want me to be your dad, Sophia, yes, I really want to be your real dad." 3 days later, Richard found himself in the office of the social worker, Dr. Evelyn Reed, with Sophia by his side. The girl wore new clothes he had bought, but still maintained that attentive, mature gaze that had impressed him from day one. "Mr. Sterling, I need to explain that the adoption process is not simple," Dr. Reed said, leafing through a thick folder. "There are background checks, psychological evaluations, home visits—" "I understand. I'm willing to do whatever is necessary," Richard replied without hesitation. "There's also the matter of Sophia's history. She isn't just a typical homeless child." Dr. Reed looked gently at the girl. "Sophia, can you tell Mr. Sterling about your parents?" Sophia lowered her eyes, nervously playing with her hands. "Mr. Richard, I didn't tell you the whole truth about how I ended up on your street." Richard felt a tightening in his chest. "You can tell me now, little one, no matter what it is. My parents were rich too. Dad had a big company like yours." Her voice became almost inaudible. "But they met a woman like Auntie Camilla. She married my dad and stole everything." Richard's world stopped. "Sophia, are you saying that Auntie Camilla and Paul did the same thing to my parents that they tried to do to you?" Tears began to stream down the girl's face. "Only with them it worked," Dr. Reed confirmed with a grave nod. Sophia's parents, David and Sarah Miller, were victims of Victoria and Mark 2 years ago. The operation was successful. They lost everything: company, house, savings. The marriage couldn't withstand the trauma, and they separated. And Sophia? She stayed with her mother initially, but Sarah developed severe depression and couldn't care for a child. Her father tried to regain custody but was struggling with financial problems and alcoholism. Sophia ended up in the foster care system but ran away multiple times. Sophia wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I ran away because I recognized them, Mr. Richard. When I saw Auntie Camilla at your house, I remembered her. She had another name when she met my dad, but it was the same person, the same way of smiling, the same voice when she got angry. Richard felt a mix of horror and admiration. You recognized Camilla and decided to protect me. At first, I just wanted to be sure. I kept watching, and I saw it was the same thing that happened to Dad. The plumber, the lies, everything the same. Sophia looked him directly in the eyes. I couldn't let it happen to you too. You were always kind to me. No one else cared if I was hungry or cold. The revelation hit Richard like a lightning bolt. A 7-year-old child had recognized a complex criminal scheme and had risked her own life to save a stranger who showed her basic kindness. Sophia, he said, his voice choked with emotion, you are the bravest person I know. Dr. Reed gently intervened. There's one more thing, Mr. Sterling. Sophia has been trying for months to help us locate Victoria and Mark so that others wouldn't be harmed. She gave us detailed descriptions, behavior patterns. Her information was crucial for us to understand how they operated. You were working with the police? Sophia shook her head. Not exactly. I tried to tell some adults about Auntie Camilla, but no one believed me. They said I was just a traumatized kid making up stories. But you didn't give up. I couldn't give up. If I didn't tell someone, they would keep hurting people. She paused. Like they hurt my dad and my mom. Richard knelt before Sophia's chair, taking her small hands in his. Sophia, I want you to know something. Your parents, what happened to them was not your fault. And what you did, saving me, was extraordinary. But if I had been smarter when it happened to them, you were 5, little one. There was nothing you could do. Richard pulled her into a hug. But now, at 7, you saved not just me, but probably many other people Victoria and Mark could have harmed. Dr. Reed observed the interaction with professional interest. Mr. Sterling, may I ask a personal question? Why do you want to adopt Sophia? Is it gratitude for what she did? Richard reflected for a moment before answering. Initially, perhaps it was gratitude, but in the last few days, I've realized something. Sophia taught me about true courage, about unconditional love, about what it truly means to care for someone. He looked at the girl in his arms. Camilla pretended to love me for 5 years. Sophia truly loved me in 5 minutes of conversation on the sidewalk. And her biological parents? Sophia pulled back slightly from the hug to answer. My dad is in a clinic getting treatment. My mom, she said she can't take care of me anymore because I remind her of everything we lost. Her voice was sad, but there was no bitterness. I understand. Sometimes it's very hard to remember bad things. Sophia has spoken with both her parents about the possibility of adoption, Dr. Reed explained. Both agreed it would be better for her to have a new family. It was a very difficult decision, but made with love. Richard felt his heart break and mend at the same time. Sophia, are you sure you want me to be your dad? It won't be just for a few days or weeks. It will be forever, Sophia smiled, the first truly joyful smile he had seen on her face. Mr. Richard, you're already my dad. It just needs the paper to say so. A week after the conversation in the social worker's office, Richard and Sophia were transforming the guest room into a real child's bedroom. Sophia had chosen a simple decor, light yellow walls with bird drawings, a white canopy bed, and a bookshelf full of books Richard had bought especially for her. Mr. Richard, can I ask you a question? Sophia was sitting on the floor, organizing her new books by preference. "Of course, little one, you can ask me anything." Richard stopped assembling the study desk to give her his full attention. "Do you miss Auntie Camilla?" The question caught him off guard. In the past few days, he had been so focused on caring for Sophia and dealing with legal matters that he hadn't fully processed his feelings about the betrayal. "It's a difficult question," he answered honestly. "I miss the person I thought she was, but that person never truly existed. So, it's strange to miss someone who was just pretending." Sophia nodded with that seriousness that always surprised him. "It's like when my parents argued because of the money they lost. I missed how they used to be, but they couldn't be those people anymore." Exactly. Sometimes we lose people we love, even when they're still alive. Richard sat on the floor beside her. "But you know what I discovered, Sophia? Sometimes, when we lose something we thought was important, we gain something even more precious." "Me?" "You," he smiled, running his hand through her hair. "And the most incredible thing is that you were always there, on the street outside, waiting to be discovered." Sophia was silent for a moment, then said something that deeply touched Richard's heart. "Mr. Richard, can you teach me how to be a rich kid? I don't know if I know how." The question revealed a vulnerability she had hidden until then. Richard realized that, despite all her maturity and courage, Sophia was still a child who had lost everything she knew and now feared she wouldn't fit into her new world. "Sophia, there's no right or wrong way to be a child, rich or poor. It doesn't matter." He turned to face her. "You just need to be yourself, the brave, intelligent and caring girl you already are." "But what if I don't know which forks to use at dinner, or if I say something wrong when your friends come over?" Richard laughed softly. "Little one, you saved my life by observing details even the police hadn't noticed. You're smarter than most adults I know. Don't worry about forks and social rules. Those are just details we learn over time. And what if I miss living on the street sometimes?" The question revealed something Richard hadn't considered. "You miss it." Sophia lowered her eyes. "A little bit. On the street, I knew who I was. I was the girl who watched and took care of things. Here, sometimes I don't know what my role is." Richard felt his heart ache. He had focused so much on giving Sophia material comfort that he hadn't thought about the emotional transition she was experiencing. "Sophia, your role here is to be my daughter. That means you can be exactly who you are, but now with safety, food, a warm bed, and someone who takes care of you." He paused. "And do you know the most important part of your role?" "What?" "To continue being the observant and protective person you've always been. Only now you use that skill to protect each other as a family." Sophia smiled shyly. "So I can keep paying attention to things." "Please do. Your observational skills are a gift." Richard stood up and extended his hand to her. "How about we take a walk around the garden? You can show me all the details you've observed about our house over the past few months." As they walked through the garden, Sophia pointed out things Richard had never noticed. Which part of the lawn received the most sun, where birds like to build nests? Which window had the best view of the street? "Mr. Richard, can I tell you a secret?" she said when they stopped near the tree where she used to hide. "Of course. For the past few months, when I watched you leave for work in the morning, I used to pretend you were my dad. I imagined you were going to work and that when you came back, I'd be here waiting." She looked at the house. "I never thought it could be real." Richard felt his eyes well up with tears. "Sophia, you know what's most incredible? I always felt like something was missing from my life, but I didn't know what it was. Now I know it was you. Really, you brought something into my life I didn't even know I needed." He knelt to be at her height. "You taught me that family isn't about blood or paperwork. It's about taking care of each other, protecting each other, and being present in important moments." Sophia hugged him tightly. "So we're a real family now. We're a real family now." At that moment, watching the little girl who had saved his life and was now his daughter playing in the garden where everything had begun. Richard understood that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as the greatest tragedies. 2 weeks later, Richard faced his first big challenge as a dad. Sophia was sitting at the breakfast table, distractedly pushing her food around without eating, with dark circles under her eyes that indicated another restless night. "Sophia, you're not eating again," he observed, trying to keep his voice soft. "Is something wrong?" The girl shrugged, avoiding his gaze. For the past 3 days, she had become quiet and distant, very different from the communicative child who had adapted so well to her new life. "Little one, we talked about this. You can tell me anything that's bothering you." Sophia finally looked up, and Richard saw tears forming. "Mr. Richard, what if Auntie Camilla comes back?" The question surprised him. "Sophia, she's in prison. She can't come back. But what if she gets out? What if she finds out I was the one who told you about the plumber?" Sophia's voice trembled. "What if she comes after me?" Richard understood immediately. The child was suffering from post-traumatic stress, reliving the fears and anxieties of everything she had been through. He stood up and sat down beside her. "Sophia, look at me." He waited until she did. "Remember when you protected me by observing the house and warning me about the plumber?" She nodded. "Now it's my turn to protect you. Camilla can't get out of prison for many, many years. And even if she could, she'd have to get through me first." His voice took on a firm, protective tone. "And I promise, I will never, ever let anyone hurt you. But you didn't know she was bad before. How can you be sure now?" The question revealed a painful wisdom. Sophia had learned too early that adults don't always manage to protect the children they love. "You're right. I didn't recognize Camilla before because I wanted to believe what she showed. I didn't pay attention to the signs." Richard took Sophia's small hands in his. "But now I've learned something very important from you. To truly pay attention. To observe. And you taught me that." "I taught you?" "Yes. You showed me how important it is to observe details, trust your instincts, not ignore signs of danger." He smiled. "Do you know what that means? It means now both of us are alert. We're a team of mutual protection." Sophia thought for a moment. "Like superheroes." "Exactly like superheroes. You have the superpower of observation, and I have the superpower of protection. Together, we're invincible." For the first time in days, Sophia smiled slightly. "And what's our superhero name?" Richard pretended to think deeply. "How about Fortress Family?" "Fortress Family," Sophia repeated, liking the sound. "I like it." "But Sophia, even superheroes sometimes get scared. It's normal. The important thing is to talk about those fears, not keep them to ourselves." Sophia nodded, then said something that showed how she was processing the situation. "Mr. Richard, yesterday I dreamed that Auntie Camilla came back. But in the dream, I couldn't speak to warn you. I woke up really scared. Nightmares are normal after what we've been through. How about we create a plan for when you get scared at night?" "What kind of plan?" "If you wake up scared, you can come straight to my room, or you can call me no matter what time it is. And during the day, if you start to feel scared, you tell me immediately." "Agreed." "Agreed." At that moment, the phone rang. It was Dr. Reed. "Mr. Sterling, I have good news. The adoption paperwork is practically ready. In 2 more weeks, Sophia will officially be your daughter by law." Richard looked at Sophia, who had heard the conversation. "You heard that, little one? In 2 weeks, you'll be my official daughter. Forever, forever." Sophia was quiet for a moment, then said, "Mr. Richard, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When I become your official daughter, can you stop calling me little one and start calling me just Sophia or daughter?" The question touched Richard deeply. He had used little one as a term of endearment, but he realized that for Sophia, it represented the memory of when she was just a child on the street he helped out of pity, Of course, Sophia. From now on, you are Sophia, my daughter Sophia. And can I call you Dad instead of Mr. Richard? You can. I'd love that. Sophia stood up and hugged him tightly. Dad, thank you for saving me too. Thank you for saving me first, daughter. As he hugged her, Richard realized that both of them were learning to heal old wounds through the love they were building together. Sophia was overcoming the trauma of losing her original family, and he was learning that true love doesn't come from perfect performances, but from genuine moments of mutual care. Dad, yes, daughter. Now I can finish my breakfast. I'm hungry, Richard chuckled, realizing that sometimes healing happens in small, everyday moments, when we feel safe enough to simply exist. The day of the final adoption hearing arrived with a light rain that left the air fresh and clean. Richard adjusted his tie nervously as he watched Sophia get ready in her room. She had chosen a light blue dress, her favorite color, and had pinned her hair with a small clip that shimmered discreetly. Dad, are you nervous? She asked, noticing how he checked his watch every few seconds. A little, Richard admitted. And you? Me too. But it's a good nervous, not a bad nervous. The distinction surprised him. What do you mean? Sophia stopped brushing her hair and turned to him. Bad nervous is when you're scared something terrible is going to happen. Good nervous is when you're scared something too wonderful to be true won't happen. The wisdom of the 7-year-old continued to impress Richard. You're right. It's a good nervous. On the way to the courthouse, Sophia held his hand in the back seat of the car. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course. Last night, I dreamed about my other parents. Her voice was calm, without the anxiety of previous days. But this time, it wasn't a nightmare. They were hugging me and saying they were happy I found a new family. Richard felt a lump in his throat. How did you feel in the dream? Sad, but also at peace. Like they were giving me permission to be happy again. Sophia looked out the window. I'll always love them, but now I can love you too without feeling guilty. Sophia, you should never feel guilty for being happy. I know, but sometimes the heart takes a while to understand what the head already knows. At the courthouse, they met Dr. Reed and the lawyer Richard had hired. There was also a surprise neither of them expected. Sophia's biological parents were there. David, her father, looked cleaner and healthier than Richard had expected. Sarah, her mother, was pale and thin, but her eyes shone with a gentle determination. Sophia, Sarah said, kneeling to be at her daughter's height, we came to wish you good luck. Mom, Sophia hesitated, not knowing how to react. Honey, your dad and I talked a lot. We know we can't be the parents you deserve right now, but we want you to know that we made this decision out of love for you. Sarah took Sophia's hands. Mr. Sterling can give you everything we can no longer offer. David approached, his voice choked. Sophia, you will always be our daughter in our hearts. But now you'll have a family that can protect you and take care of you as you deserve. Sophia looked between her biological parents and Richard, processing the emotional complexity of the situation. Aren't you sad? We are, David admitted, but we're also relieved. You'll be safe and loved. Sarah turned to Richard. Mr. Sterling, thank you for saving our daughter, not just from the dangerous situation, but for giving her a chance to be a child again. Thank you for raising such an extraordinary girl, Richard replied. You can visit whenever you want. Sophia will always be your daughter too. When they were called for the hearing, Sophia walked between Richard and her biological parents, holding everyone's hands. In the judge's chambers, she was questioned about her decision. Sophia, are you sure you want to be adopted by Mr. Sterling? The judge asked gently. Yes, sir. Why? Sophia thought carefully before answering. Because he taught me that family isn't just about who raised you, but about who chooses to stay with you in difficult times. And because when I was scared and alone, he truly saw me. And do you understand that this means Mr. Sterling will be your legal father? I understand, but he's already been my dad in my heart for weeks. The judge smiled and turned to Richard. Mr. Sterling, are you prepared to assume full responsibility for Sophia, including her education, health, and emotional well-being? I am more than prepared, Your Honor. Sophia taught me what it means to be a father. She saved me first. Now it's my turn to save her every day for the rest of our lives. Very well, the judge struck the gavel. I declare the adoption official, Sophia Miller Sterling. You are now legally the daughter of Richard Sterling. Sophia burst into tears of joy and ran to hug Richard. Dad, it's official now. It's official now, daughter. As they left the courthouse, a real family for the first time, Richard realized he had found something he never knew he was looking for. And Sophia had found not just security, but the confirmation that it was possible to rebuild a family after the first one shattered. Outside, the rain had stopped and the sun began to appear between the clouds, illuminating the beginning of a new life for both. 3 months after the official adoption, Richard was in his home office when Sophia burst in, holding an official letter. Dad, a letter from the court arrived, she said, out of breath from running. Richard carefully opened the envelope. It was the final verdict notification for Victoria, Camilla, and Mark. Both had been sentenced to 25 years in prison for multiple crimes of fraud, extortion, and the 2 previous homicides. It's over, Sophia. They've been sentenced. They'll never be able to hurt anyone again. Sophia nodded solemnly. Does that mean the parents of the other people they hurt will get justice? Yes. And the families will be able to try to recover at least some of what they lost. Richard folded the letter. You know part of this victory is yours, don't you? Without your courage to warn me, they would have continued. We're a team, remember, Fortress family. In the months following the adoption, life had settled into a loving and predictable routine. Sophia had enrolled in a nearby school and adapted wonderfully. Her grades were excellent, and she'd made several friends. Most importantly, the nightmares had drastically decreased. Dad, can I tell you something about school? Of course. Sophia sat in the armchair next to his desk. There's a new girl in my class. Her name is Anna. She's very quiet and always stays alone at recess. Richard recognized the tone. Sophia had developed a sharp protective instinct after everything she went through. Do you think she needs help? I think so. She has the same look I had when I lived on the street. You know, that look of someone who's always paying attention to protect themselves. Sophia paused. Can I invite her to play here at home someday? Maybe she just needs a friend. Of course you can. How about we invite her for lunch on Saturday? Sophia smiled. Thanks, Dad. I think it's important to take care of those who are alone. Like you took care of me. Sophia's empathy and generosity continued to impress Richard. Despite having gone through significant trauma, she had emerged with an even bigger heart and a determination to help others who were going through difficulties. That afternoon, while Sophia was doing her homework at the kitchen table, Richard received an unexpected phone call. It was Dr. Reed. Mr. Sterling, I have a somewhat unusual question. Would you and Sophia be interested in participating in a mentorship program for other families going through the adoption process? What kind of mentorship? You would share your experience with other adoptive parents and children. Especially cases where children have gone through trauma, Sophia has a unique perspective that could greatly help other children. Richard looked at Sophia, who had stopped her homework and was clearly listening to the conversation. Sophia, would you like to help other children who are going through the same situation you went through? Sophia's eyes lit up. Can I really do that? Of course you can. In fact, I think you'd be perfect for it. Sophia thought for a moment. Dad, remember when you said I taught you about observing and protecting? I remember. Maybe I can teach other kids those things too, so they know they can trust their instincts. Sophia turned towards the phone. Dr. Reed. Yes, I want to help, but can I ask a question? Of course. Sophia, the kids we're going to help, Will they know they can also become a real family, like me and my dad? That's exactly the message we want to convey. Then I want to participate." After Richard hung up the phone, Sophia returned to her homework, but stopped again to say, "Dad, do you know the most incredible part about having a family?" "What?" "It's that love doesn't run out when you share it. In fact, it gets bigger." She smiled. "Like, I love you, but I still have plenty of love left to help other people." Richard felt his heart swell with pride. In less than a year, Sophia had evolved from a traumatized child living on the streets to a confident, loving, and generous girl, determined to use her experiences to help others. "Sophia, do you know you're one of the wisest people I know? I learned from the best dad in the world," she responded casually, returning to her math homework. At that moment, Richard understood that his journey of almost losing everything had transformed into the greatest blessing of his life. Not only had he gained an extraordinary daughter, but he had discovered his true purpose: to create a home where genuine love could flourish and multiply, reaching out to others who needed hope. The house that had once been a stage for lies and manipulation now became a sanctuary of true love and mutual growth. Exactly 1 year after that sunny morning, when Sophia had whispered her first warning about the plumber, Richard woke to the sound of laughter coming from the garden. He looked out the window and saw Sophia playing with Anna, the girl who had become her best friend, and 2 other children from the mentorship program who had visited over the weekend. The garden that had once been a scene of conspiracies now echoed with the genuine joy of children simply being children. Richard smiled, remembering how that very space had witnessed dark moments that almost destroyed his life. "Dad, come play with us!" Sophia shouted, waving energetically from the tree where she used to hide to observe the house. He went down to join them, carrying a tray with juices and cookies. The children greeted him with warm hugs, something that still surprised and deeply moved him. "Mr. Sterling," said Miguel, an 8-year-old boy they had met through the mentorship program. "Sophia told me you guys are real superheroes. Is that true?" Richard exchanged a knowing look with Sophia. "What do you think?" "I think so. Sophia said she has the power to observe and protect, and you have the power to care for and give a family to those who need one." "Miguel is right," said Anna, who had become more confident in recent months. "You saved each other." Sophia approached Richard and held his hand. "Dad, can I tell them about the new project?" In recent weeks, Richard and Sophia had started working on something special: the creation of a foundation to help vulnerable children and adults who were victims of financial crimes. Sophia had suggested the name Protective Observers Foundation. "Of course, you can tell them," Sophia brightened. "We're going to open a foundation to help kids who are alone and adults who were tricked by bad people, like what happened to me and my dad." "And you're going to live in a giant house with all those kids?" asked one of the girls. "Not exactly," Richard chuckled. "We'll help find loving families for each child, just like what happened with us. And we'll teach adults to pay attention to the signs, like Sophia taught me. The best part," Sophia added, "is that we'll have a team of kids who have been through tough stuff to help other kids, because those who've been through it know best what it's like." Miguel clapped his hands. "Can I help when I grow up?" "Of course you can. Everyone can help." At that moment, Richard received a message on his phone. It was from Detective Miller, now retired, but who had become a close family friend. "Richard, I saw the news about the foundation in the paper. Congratulations. I've attached an article that might interest you both." The article reported that, thanks to the evidence collected in Victoria and Mark's case, 3 more similar cases had been solved, resulting in the arrest of other criminals and the recovery of millions in stolen assets for the victim families. "Sophia, come see this," Richard called, showing her the article. Sophia read carefully, her expression growing increasingly serious. "Dad, does this mean more people got justice because of us?" "Because of you, mainly. If you hadn't been brave enough to warn me that day..." We're a team, remember? Sophia smiled. But it's amazing to think that terrible day turned into something that helped so many people. As the children returned to their play, Richard and Sophia sat on the bench under the tree, the same spot where she used to observe the house in the days she lived on the street. "Dad, can I ask you a philosophical question?" Sophia said, using an expression she had recently learned. "Of course. Do you think bad things happen for a reason, like to teach something or lead to something good?" Richard reflected carefully. "I think bad things just happen sometimes, but I also think we can choose what to do with them. We can let them destroy us, or we can use the experience to help other people." "Is that what we did?" "That's exactly what we did. We transformed our pain into purpose." Sophia nodded wisely. "You know the most incredible part of all this?" "What?" "It's that the day I warned you about the plumber, I thought I was just saving you. But actually, I was saving our whole family, even without knowing we were going to become a family." Richard felt his eyes fill with tears of gratitude. "Sophia, you didn't just save our family. You saved my capacity to trust, to love, to be truly happy. And you saved me from loneliness and taught me that I deserve to be loved exactly as I am." At that moment, observing the children playing in the garden where everything had begun, Richard understood that sometimes the greatest transformations are born from the darkest moments. The plumber, who should have been an instrument of destruction, had, ironically, become the catalyst that mended two broken hearts and united them into a family based on genuine love and regained trust. The little girl who lived on the streets and whispered a warning had saved not just a rich man, but had found her own home. And the millionaire who had almost lost everything had discovered that his true wealth had never been in his possessions, but in the capacity to love and be loved unconditionally. As the sun set over the garden full of children's laughter, father and daughter knew they had found something no criminal could ever steal: a family built on the solid foundation of true love, mutual trust, and the commitment to protect each other forever.